Suella Braverman has said that unless Rishi Sunak changes, the party will fail and he will lose the general election that's coming up. Rishi Sunak has said, unite or die. So Nick Robinson on the Today programme asked Suella Braverman whether or not she thought that Rishi Sunak and the Conservative Party has a death wish.
Good morning, Nick.
Do you? Does your party have a death wish?
Not at all. We are fighting to stop the boats, stabilise the economy and deliver for the British people.
You laugh at the question. You talk about death.
General election.
The Prime Minister talks about death. That's why I asked you.
No, we don't have a death wish. We need to stop the boats. And at the moment, we are in a very perilous situation. The facts don't lie. And we need to deliver on a key promise. That's how we will win the next general election. We've made the promise. The Prime Minister made the promise to stop the boats at the beginning of the year. We now need to deliver on that pledge. The time for talk, the time for slogans and promises is over. We need to show delivery. And that's what this debate right now is all about.
The problem is that she's using the first person plural. We need to show delivery. We need to do this. We need to do that. But she's no longer in a position of weeing. She's in a position where she is solitary and on the back benches. She needs to know her place.
Turn to that then, the problem you say with delivery. Why do you say a policy that goes much further than any government has gone before to exclude the courts, domestic and international, from, as you would see it, frustrating the policy of sending migrants abroad? Why do you say that isn't enough?
Yes, well, the thing is, she's obsessed with getting out of the ECHR. That's her latest obsession. It goes beyond getting rid of the boats, stopping the small boats. It's about compromising our relationship with the international community.
Well, there are elements that should be welcomed in this new bill that the Prime Minister has presented. But taken as a whole and looking at the reality of the challenges that are involved in detaining people, removing people and getting them to Rwanda, this is a very litigious field and there are lots of legal frameworks that apply. The reality is, and the sorry truth is, that it won't work. And it will not stop the boats. That's my opinion, having read it in the last 12, 24 hours.
Lord Sumption, the former Supreme Court Justice, a man who criticised the government previously here on the Today programme, said yesterday, I think she's wrong, and he means you. He says the courts will be prevented from giving what they technically call interim relief, except in a very narrow range of cases. In other words, what he's saying is, under these changes, people will be able to be sent to Rwanda and the courts will not be able to stop the flights. Why do you think you're right and he's wrong?
Well, with respect, I disagree. If you look at the wording of the bill, there are clear sections which allow a whole raft of individual claims to be made by people that we might seek to remove to Rwanda. They will be able to bring those claims through the courts via judicial review. They will be able to challenge the decisions made by the Secretary of State, and those challenges could take months and potentially sometimes years.
But Lord Sumption
will
makes the point,
ultimately
it won't
clog
block
up
the flights.
Clog up the system.
They won't block
and
the
stop
flights.
our removal of those people to Rwanda.
They won't block the flights, says Lord Sumption, except in extreme circumstances. He is a former Supreme Court Justice. You'd think he would probably understand the law.
Yes, absolutely. And I have been working on this matter myself for several years now. And the point is that in Section 4 of the bill, there are broad clauses there which do allow individual claims to be made. And that's the reality. We can't tweak at this problem. We can't do half measures. We have to totally exclude international law, refugee convention, other broader avenues of legal challenge, because the reality is, Nick, in this area of law, as we've seen, regrettably, in June 2022, people will bring legal claims. They will bring challenges through the courts, and those challenges will operate to block flights to Rwanda. And that is how this bill and the sections in this bill will operate in reality.
Well, it's interesting that you use the word reality, because in the last hour or so, a Downing Street spokesman has said that you are denying reality. The Rwandan government ministers say, have made it clear that they will not be party to an agreement that breaches international law. So are you denying the reality that what you are recommending would be ripped up by the Rwandan government?
No, I'm very surprised by the statement which has been put out by Downing Street and the Prime Minister on this, because on the one hand, the bill that the Prime Minister himself has put forward makes clear that they are disapplying elements of international law to a degree. On the face of the bill, the Secretary of State cannot confirm that the bill complies with international law. So on that basis, there would be a problem given the statement made by Downing Street. Secondly,
it's not true?
I would also say that the measures that I'm proposing do not breach international law.
You say
There
it's
is
not
a
true what they're
perfectly,
saying.
if I can just finish the point because it's quite important, the measures that I've proposed do not breach international law. There is a perfectly legitimate basis in international law for justifying the measures that I've put forward.
Are you saying that they are lying when they say that the Rwandan government would not go ahead on the basis that you are recommending?
What I'm saying is that there's an intellectual incoherence to the statement put out by
That's an interesting answer,
Downing
but it's not an
Street
answer to the question
here.
I asked you. Are they lying when they say they know what the Rwandan government think and what the government would do? Do you know differently?
Well, what I'm saying is that there is an incoherence because the bill that's on the table
Suella
right
Braverman,
now.
are they lying?
I don't know. I'm sure that I have a lot of respect for the Rwandan government. I've been working with them myself over the last 12 years. You'd have to ask them and you'd have to ask the Prime Minister. These are statements made by other people. What
Well,
I'm saying
let me read to you
is
what
that
the
they
Rwandan
don't.
government says. You've just told me that we ought to ask them. Well, we have. The Foreign Minister says it's always been important to both Rwanda and the UK that our rule of law partnership meets the highest standards of international law. The government says that means your scheme denies reality. I ask you again, are you saying that the Prime Minister is misrepresenting what the Rwandan government thinks?
I disagree with the Prime Minister on this.
Okay.
The bill on the table itself disapplies international law. The bill on the table itself makes clear that the Secretary of State cannot confirm that it complies with international law. On that basis, the statement from the Rwandan government would mean that it doesn't support the bill on the table. And secondly, the proposals that I have put forward do not breach international law.
But let's move on to the Prime Minister. We've both mentioned him. When you were sacked by him, you wrote an excoriating letter about him. You said he was either incapable of keeping his promises or never intended to. What's your conclusion now? Is he incapable or is he never intending to do it?
Listen, the Prime Minister has a very difficult job. There are lots of conflicting factors and issues to weigh up on any decision.
Sure, which is why I asked you about your words. You said he was either incapable of keeping his promises or he never intended to. Which is it?
All I know is that when I took up the role of Home Secretary, I put forward to him a plan to stop the boats, a plan that I believed, based on my experience of trying to fix this problem with previous Prime Ministers and for several years, that would work. He gave me firm assurances, personal and after extensive discussion, that plan was accepted and we could deliver that plan together.
So where does it leave him now?
Ultimately, he blocked that plan.
Where does it leave him now?
The only problem with this version of history that Suella Braverman is now peddling is it wasn't her plan. It was surely Priti Patel's plan.
Well, I very much hope that the Prime Minister changes course. I very much hope that he takes on board the kind of observations that people are making about the content of this bill right now. He takes them on board. There is still time to change this bill. This has just been introduced. It's going to go through Parliament and scrutiny. There is time to change course.
And if he
I
doesn't?
very much urge him to encourage a receptive attitude to some of the changes that people
And if
are
he doesn't?
suggesting. Well, listen, ultimately this bill will fail. That's what I'm just being honest about where we are. We've put 2 acts of Parliament through already. We've done huge amounts of work to stop this problem. We have not succeeded in stopping the boats. Time is running out. We cannot afford to put forward yet another bill that is destined to fail.
Well, if
And
it fails, he would have to go, wouldn't he?
Well, I mean, listen, I want the Prime Minister to succeed in delivering on his pledge to stop the boats.
You want the
us
Prime
to
Minister to succeed. You've previously described him in the letter after, let's just remind you, you were sacked, you didn't resign, as uncertain, weak and lacking in the qualities of leadership that this country needs. Do you seriously expect people to believe that you want Rishi Sunak to succeed, rather than what everybody assumes, is that you want to bring him down and take over his job?